That's part of the game, huh? We're looking for $5 million.
We have no idea what the game is.
If all three of us go home, all three of us go home, because to us, that's how we were raised morally, that we're not going to get strong-armed. If we're going to make a decision, we're going to make it on our own free will.
She's like told us, she said, I truly believe if I were to stay here, one of you guys will self-sacrifice.
You're not going to intimidate me. I'm just pissed off of what you just said.
Oh, so you want to play that game?
Fair and love and war.
Yeah, all fair and love and war.
Yeah.
I was like, let me make this as insufferable as possible, as much as possible for the both of you.
You say this, and you were saying we're communicating with each other the entire time. The majority of that communication was just literally telepathy.
Someone needs to be a villain.
We gotta have it's gotta be an intro, bro.
What intro?
We're just talking.
This is the intro, right?
No. This no, this is the intro.
This is the intro about stuttering.
So crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy would just, I mean, you and I we don't think it's crazy because we experienced it, but crazy would just transpired and on these games, and more importantly, how the internet's reacting.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was like how they portrayed that episode.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we knew it was going to be on the show.
Oh, absolutely.
Because our box was pretty crazy, but
absolutely,
that was a pretty big part of that episode. It's obviously for TV, reality and stuff like that. The biggest thing is that reality TV, that's just how it works,
Yeah.
As someone needs to be a villain. And we just so happen to be that people.
That's okay. That's part of the game, huh?
That's how it is.
That's part of the game. Yeah. You and I were both there, right? So
Obviously.
yeah, duh. So obviously, a couple of days before, we were just on the tower in B City. And we were both on level 1, and we both were the user brain, right? One node star user brain. And after that happened, it was in a super, super high. Everybody was happy. Everybody was excited. I mean, we had a whole speech where we dubbed everybody on our floor Habibis. And then the next day, it was a day off. I mean, that's something that they don't show, but it was a day off. So we had a whole.
I believe that was the party, right? That was the.
That was the night that we had the party. Yeah, we had the 24 hours off, and then they came out and brought some music. And mind you, we haven't had music or anything for a while. So then we ended up having a dance party.
For about almost a week now.
Correct.
So it takes about a week to film 2 episodes.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. They brought the music out, and we had a good old time. And, they did a good job. BC did a good job. Yeah. It definitely got us to get our guards down. And the next day, I mean, up until that point, right? We theorized a lot. We talked about a lot, what's going on and what's going to happen. We don't know any of the challenges that are going to happen next until maybe 30 minutes, an hour before the actual game, maybe even less sometimes. And we spent a lot of time trying to theorize. So at this point, we truly believe that this game is not going to be elimination.
Which, I mean, he wasn't lying.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. No elimination on that one. And
the biggest thing that we learned in the red box was the emotional roller coaster that the show has, has its ups, has its really big highs, and then it's got its downs, which obviously was everybody after the red box. Yeah, not us, but
I was down. It was down for everybody. It was hard. It was a hard situation for me. I mean, the audience doesn't notice. You know this, obviously, but up until this point, 225 and I, Maddie and I, we're friends. I mean, she's part of our group, right? She's part of our core group. That's how we ended up, all three of us in this.
Of course, I mean, obviously, the biggest thing was they said, pick your friends, pick who you're going to be with.
Correct.
And that's the thing that most people didn't know is the fact that, yeah, she actually was, your friend. She didn't know me. I didn't know her personally. We didn't really talk.
Yep.
But just because I was associated with you is how we kind of ended up in the same box.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, Jimmy said, pick your friend. And that's what happened. It was a group of 6 of us, and we decided how we're going to go split the group based off, at that point, they told us it was a sack race. So we wanted to try to be as advantageous as possible. And in the back of our head, I remember in the back of our heads, we're like, maybe it's a challenge, maybe it's not,
I know 100% Maddie was definitely pushing that.
She was.
She said she didn't feel something right.
She was. But I mean, at that point, it was
already done too.
It was, yeah. They were taking pictures and they were getting our IDs. So they were pretty stringent about it. I think at that point, we're like, why the heck are they doing this if it's just a sack race? And when they told us, it was just like, oh my goodness, what the heck? And honestly, for us, we don't know what the challenge was at that point. We didn't know how many people were going to go home. They just said, this next challenge, the 3 of you guys are going to be going up against each other. And I felt, you and I felt leading to that point that we were in an advantageous position. And she kept trying to talk to us. and we didn't know what we were going to play. And the response was always, let's wait to figure it out. Let's wait to figure
We
it out.
don't know the rules. The entire thing. This is the thing that most people didn't know. But like our biggest lessons that we learned, especially as from Vegas too, when we were filming the YouTube video, was don't try to predict the next challenge. You're gonna get completely wrong. We have no idea. And so that was the biggest thing that we were getting to. That was, hey, let's just wait and see what the rules are, and then we can kind of just see what's going on. Obviously, yeah. I mean, going into it, you and I are there. So, and, we could speak another language on top of that. So it's not like we can make our own plans without, her involved, if we wanted to come to that point, but we didn't know. She was very, very like kind of in the flight or fight mode because she obviously was scared and anxious of, what's going on. And she's matched up with two brothers. And then one of them obviously being, her friend up until that point. So
yeah, absolutely.
I remember sitting next to her on the bus as we were driving to set, and everyone is crying, and she like literally like I'm just sitting there, just thinking pretty neutral. I'm not happy or I'm not sad, and she starts making small talk with me. Just I don't know if she wants like some type of advantage thing, if she is trying to get at, hey, we're friends, because she realizes that I'm the person who, doesn't really know her. And so she can obviously side with you on certain things, but she doesn't know me at all. So I don't know if she was trying to like talk to me or something like that, but I do remember that. Remember everybody on that bus basically crying, except the three of us. She got to the point where she was starting to get a little bit more emotional the closer we got there. But it was almost like, I guess, stages of grief. She was sad. And then, once we got into the box, that's when she got angry at us. And the thing is that entire point, like we never made any plans. We never made anything like set in stone. We never made her be like, oh yeah, it's, you're going to get out. Right. So
we just didn't know. We didn't know what the rules were. At that point, we're competing for $5 million.
We have no idea what the game is.
But we want to be in as much advantageous position as possible because we're both competing for $5 million.
Up until that point, we actually didn't even know if all three of us can make it out or not. They didn't explain those rules until
we had no idea. We just knew we were going up against each other.
Exactly. Yeah. So maybe there's a way to get all three of us, to get out and everything. And once we got to set and we got in those boxes, like literally before the rules were explained, she basically said, because you could assume what's going on. You have a box.
I think the rules had been explained at that point,
No.
Generally speaking. No,
No.
maybe not.
I
don't remember.
I remember explaining to other people like, wow, she like basically said all these things before the rules were explained.
Mm-hmm.
So we went in those boxes, and if you have some sort of, brain, you can kind of sense of what's going on. You have a box, three people. I mean, 30, and then he kind of like starts to say, okay, all this stuff. And, Maddie starts to assume that, one of us is going to go out because you can see handcuffs.
There's one handcuff.
There's one handcuff. I mean,
handcuff.
it's pretty easy to understand what's going on here. So she tells us before the rules were explained that she was not going to be the one going home, and that she was going to make sure that it was one of us.
Yeah.
And so as she said that, I looked at you and like you looked at me and we're like, oh, so that's how she wants it.
That's the game we're playing.
That's the game.
Oh, I guess it's war now.
Yeah.
I guess it's war. So yeah, and at that point, I mean, for the most part, we have been communicating. I mean, on the show, I know afterwards you go on an interview, you say we've been communicating secretly. At this point, we haven't really said anything.
We haven't said anything.
We haven't come up with a plan or anything like that, or we don't know what's going on.
But we literally are both in the side of like saying, hey, we both pretty much just accepted the fact that we're all going home.
Yeah.
Because
well, explain that a little bit more. Because up until that point, you can speak for yourself, I'll speak for me. But up until that point, we didn't know what was going on. But I didn't have a problem self-sacrificing for you if it came down to me. But then once she said one of you two is self-sacrificing for the other, she's stronger.
She forced her hand. Like that
wasn't gonna happen.
I know that's not how we were raised.
We're not. I don't get strong. You don't get strong.
I'm clearly not.
Mom knows. Mom, that's what mom taught us, and that's how everybody in the family is.
Play fair. Like, so that's the thing.
We were at that point. We didn't know what it was, but at that point, play a fair game, and it would have been okay, cool. If somebody goes home, somebody goes home. But she decided to strong arm us. Okay, cool. Well, now let's fight.
Yeah, and I'm sure at that point, if she was civil, I would have definitely participated in the card game.
Yeah,
100%. Because it would have been like, oh, it just unlucky.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah,
right?
It is what it is.
But the fact that she like literally said, "Hey, one of you guys are getting eliminated."
Yeah,
and just basically completely like after she was like 30 minutes ago on the bus talking to me about her kid and all this stuff, and I guess maybe trying to make me feel bad on purpose, all this stuff, and she realized, hey, he's not on my side, and maybe I gotta do something. So she played that aggressive, and obviously that didn't really work out for her,
which is hilarious because
that's on the show.
Hindsight 2020. I mean, okay, let's talk about it a little bit more, and we'll get to the part where we draw cards. So, okay, so she says that, right? We have the time. We go outside. We're talking about what's going on. We come to an agreement that no matter what ends up happening, we're not going to self-sacrifice. If all three of us go home, all three of us go home, because to us, that's how we were raised morally, that we're not going to get strong-armed. If we're going to make a decision, we're going to make it on our own free will. And since she wanted to strong-arm us, then I'd rather all three of us go home than none of us go home. You know what I mean?
I remember in the box, she literally mentioned this, and we started to talk this out of like, she was like, one of you guys is going to go home. And she's like, told us, she said, I truly believe if I were to stay here, one of you guys will self-sacrifice. And I remember the first time she said that, you and I both looked at each other and just started laughing.
Yeah.
Because
she had no idea.
She had no idea. She didn't understand how stubborn we were.
She had no clue. At that point. And this is pretty early on. I remember, okay, so game starts, rules are explained, game starts.
We're already like just in bad mood.
It's terrible mood. She's in the corner, you're in the corner, I'm in the corner, right? And I remember I was just so pissed off with her at this point because in the game, we were friends, right? And she came out fighting like that. And I gave her the deathliest death stare for 30 minutes. And I remember she called me. She was just like, that's not going to work on me. You're not going to intimidate me. And in my head, I'm like, I'm not trying to intimidate you. I'm just pissed off of what you just said. Right. And then after a while, I'm like, well, this is stupid. I'm not going to get anywhere with any of this. Let me calm down for a second. So I kind of lay down, and, when the audience sees us that we're laying down, it's because literally nothing was going on.
Literally nothing. That was right after she said, what is. Yeah. And again, this a throwback to before the game started. She literally said that of like, you guys are going to get out, one of you. And like, we both started just like looking at her and like saying like, hey, well, I mean, we're all going to go home.
Mm-hmm.
We literally both accepted that we're all going to go home.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, once we laid down and I had a second to calm down in my head, I said, okay, well, I can either accept to go home, or I 4.5 hours, 5 hours to try to convince this girl to play a game.
Because right now, if nothing had happened, well, 100% we're all going home.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So when the thing is a lot of people are saying like, oh, well, what are the chances for her of like, if she just did nothing, the chances of her going home would be 33%. And that's absolutely wrong.
Yeah, it would have been 100%. It would have been 100% because we weren't budget. And either she could have played a game and given herself a chance, or not playing a game and not giving herself a chance, because that's how it was framed to us. That's how it was set up. And at that point, the goal was, well, let's just get her to play a game. Let me spend the next 4.5 hours to figure it out and convince her to play a game. I didn't care what game. That's the hill that we were fighting. A lot of other cubes, they were at a point that they had already agreed, okay, cool, let's play a game. Like that was their starting point. Our box was starting negative. And I remember I got her to start talking, and the entire conversation for the first 3 hours when we finally decided to play a game.
3 hours, as in
to decide to play a game.
180 minutes.
Yeah, to decide to play a game. For the first 3 hours-ish, it just, well, I actually think if I don't do anything, one of you two is going to self-sacrifice for the other. And I'm saying, no, that's not going to happen because we're going to go home. So it's purely me explaining to her, you're going to go home if we do absolutely nothing. And all three of us are going to go home. And that's the decision you're making. And that's how there's some lines in there that show that. That's the decision you're making right now means all three of us are going to go home.
And that is the thing is that's what, the show doesn't really show, and kind of people assume is like, we went into this with the whole like, oh, we're going to just absolutely like bully her into, doing this. And it was like, it's like, oh, so you want to play that game? It's like,
all's fair in love and war.
Yeah, all's fair in love and war.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I remember at a point, well, let me say this. I remember at a point, part of me trying to convince her was we were talking and she's like, well, what game would we play? And I was just like, I don't know, let's just draw cards and lowest card loses, right? And she's like, oh, okay, cool. And I remember as soon as I got a yes or a small glimpse of yes, let's play a game, I picked up the phone immediately. You don't remember this. I picked up the phone immediately and I said, I need a deck of cards and Jimmy right now.
Yeah.
And my goal, and
this is after 3 hours.
Yes.
Yes. This is after
close to 3 hours.
And mind you, I'm in the corner. I haven't really said anything. And that's purely because I'm not friends with, and it's like, there's nothing I can say.
And I was speaking for both of us.
Yeah. So I was like, whatever. And up until that point, it's like, it's all you. Like, I'm just here gonna see what happens. But
absolutely.
I remember seeing you like literally immediately the second she said yes, like, okay, boom, let's
get that done.
Let's get the cards.
But the goal at that point was like, well, if Jimmy comes, Jimmy's coming with cameras.
Of course.
Let's put her in front of the fire. Yeah. Let's put her in front of the cameras and let's force her to make a decision right there. And when she doesn't make a decision, then you have Jimmy there in front of the cameras there. You know what I mean? That is going to play in part of the psychology because I just wanted her to play the game. Right.
It's just to play a game, just to be fair. Like, and up until that point, I was literally completely okay with being part of the games or being part of the drawing.
Yeah.
And so
talk me through that.
You get the call on the phone of the deck of cards and you're saying, I need deck of cards. And Jimmy, I think you said like, we're ready to make a decision, ready to whatever. And as you call, I kind of wake up, literally I've just been dormant for 3 hours, like you said, explaining it's numb to my ears. I'm just, laying there sleeping, basically just trying to get some rest to understand. And so you call the people, and as you call them and they're getting the deck of cards, I think to myself, I say,
I actually think I spoke to Chandler on the phone because it was Chandler, Carmen, and Mac that were the three on the phone. I think I spoke to Chandler at that point.
So you grab the deck of cards from the phone and you say, hey, I need a deck of cards, whatever. Jimmy, come here. We're ready to draw.
But she still hasn't fully decided that she's going to play a game. We're still having this conversation of are we going to play or are we not going to play, and then trying to set some ground rules and whatnot, right? I think it's probably maybe like 5 minutes, but she's finally like, okay, I'm going to play a game. That was it.
Yeah. And so for me, I'm like, I'm thinking, because for me, I'm always like making sure that, I'm making the best decision. You're making the best decision. She's making the best decision. And so I'm thinking to myself, I'd say, if we play this game, right now, you and I have a 66% chance that one of us will be eliminated. And that is more than half. And that's obviously not advantageous for us because the longer we go together, the higher chance that, we can make it farther because
we would double the chance of everybody else on the show.
Exactly. For the family. And on top of that, I actually think it's more than double percent because the fact that we can trust each other. And so that is so huge. I remember being quiet the entire time. I had not been part of this conversation. And it's actually part of the show as one of the quotes was like, I was not a part of this conversation. You guys had talked to each other. You kind of agreed. And I was just, again, I've been kind of a ghost. I've been a little like, fly on the wall, just in the corner, not really saying anything. And, in my head, I decide if I don't play the game and one of them draw, and then they decide who goes or who goes home, we now have a 50% chance that we both, move on instead of a 33% chance. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just running the calculations in my head and I'm like saying like, I'm not going to play. Like,
which is funny. You talk about calculations.
Yeah.
It's ironic that you talk about
and mind you, this entire time I had not said a single word to you about anything that I was thinking about. Mm-hmm. No, I think it was before.
No, it was the second draw. Because at this point, she's like, well, I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to play. I'm not going to do. At this point, now I'm on another hill trying to convince her.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
To play a game, her and I, rather than nothing at all.
Okay. So right now, we're in a spot. You guys are, she's hesitant. You've almost kind of like half convinced her. I've decided in my head, I'm not going to play because that's going to increase our chances.
And you haven't communicated.
I haven't communicated a single thing. So you are under the presumption that I'm about to play this game with her.
Yeah.
So
Jimmy comes.
Deck of cards have arrived.
He shuffles,
right? So we unshuffle just so it's like nobody can say that, we cheated or whatever.
Yeah.
He shuffles.
We draw from the top.
Yeah. He comes in, what it says here, you guys both drop from the top.
Yeah.
And
he gives Maddie a card. He gives me a card. And he turns and gives you a card.
No, he doesn't give me a card. He turns and he like hands out
Yeah.
his hand with the deck of cards.
Yeah.
And I look at the cards and I look at him and I'm like, I'm not drawing. And, you know, you can see it in the show. Like you guys both like just like whip your head at me. And it was like, what? You know, like in such disbelief because you had no idea I was
Oh
going
my
to do that.
goodness, I was so pissed.
And she had no idea. You guys were both under the assumption I was going to. Again, I never agreed to this. And this was a part of the show that they didn't show. But yes, Karim, yeah, like you
I
were
was so pissed. I was like, dude, I just spent 3 hours talking Maddie into playing a game when we were up against the wall and she wasn't going to play a game. And then you said, I'm not going to play a game. And I was genuinely beyond pissed off with you. I started cussing you out in Arabic. Yeah, I cussed you out in Arabic. I was beyond pissed
for a
off.
while.
Yes.
Like that was literally like double the length of the clip was you just cussing me out in Arabic. And
It was like a good 4, 5, 6 minutes. It was, yeah, I was pissed off.
you were calling me stupid and like all this stuff and like, you know, explaining like, hey, like we just spent 3 hours and you're you know, looking at me like,
Yeah.
what the heck? And so as you're cussing me out in Arabic, I think to myself, I'm like, this is great. And I'm smiling the entire time. And you're like getting more mad that I'm smiling.
Well, I was mad at that you were smiling initially speaking.
Yeah.
And then because I know you and you kept smiling and I was cussing you out and you can tell I was genuinely pissed off. I was just like, he's smiling for a reason.
And so as I'm thinking, it struck to me. I said, oh my God, I have just created a perfect scenario because this is the only way that she's going to be convinced. If she's been convinced once, there's a pretty
easy.
high chance that
Easy.
she's going to be convinced again.
Easy. That's sales 101.
100% sales.
And I say sales 101 because I've been in sales for 10 years, almost a decade now that I've been in sales. And that's anybody that works in sales understands it's small yeses. If you want somebody to do what you want them to do, it's small yeses. I mean, they indirectly call it manipulation, do whatever. It's just convincing the person in front of you. You do that every single day. You convince people in front of you to do what you want them to do, but also to their benefit. And at this point, it was to her benefit because if not, she would have gone home. At least here she has a chance to move forward. And it's a small yes. It's a small yes. It's a small yes. So once she's there and she finally is like, oh yeah, I'll play a game.
Yeah.
Maybe we can take it. Maybe we can, at this point, let's be strategic. And, you know, it's war. We want the best odds for both of us to move forward. So let's move forward.
Let's play it. Let's make it as.
So I finally calmed down.
Yeah. So, before that, actually, I just to finish my thought, I remember, like I said, I remember him saying, like, I've created the perfect scenario for us, because now I understand that you're mad at me. And that's a wonderful thing to be because the fact that you can make friends purely because you both have a common enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know you guys are already like kind of, you know, friends somewhat, whatever. But at this point, she's kind of feels like it's her versus us.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to flip it and make it you guys versus me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can take over and say, okay, like, let's just have her convince the game, whatever. I'm going to be the bad guy. I'll be the bad guy, whatever. You guys can, you know, talk to each other as if you're basically scheming against me.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, I finally calmed down.
Yeah.
I sit back down in my corner and I think we all lay down and we just, nothing.
Yeah. Nobody said anything.
You are laid down, you're taking your nap. Maddie's in your corner. I think she requested a chair or something like that. And I'm in my corner and I'm just laying down. I'm just like, what the heck do I do? And I'm like, oh, I finally understood what you did. I was thinking through the numbers in my head and I was just like, I get what he's doing now. I get the statistics behind it. I get the advantage behind it. And now I get where I can take this and go forward and be her friend against you. I mean, you say this and you were saying we're communicating with each other the entire time. Majority of that communication was just brotherly telepathy. We just understood where we're at. It just little looks, little glances. They're not necessarily we're talking to her behind her back. I mean, yeah, we do have our language, but I don't think at any point we were going to talk to her.
Because it's going to be obvious that we're speaking by.
Obvious. And that was the only time I think I talked to you in Arabic was just when I yelled, when I was cussing you out, when I was pissed off and I was cussing you out. Other than that, we're not talking to each other behind her back because we're trying to get our way at this point.
The consequences of her catching you talking to me behind her back
Not worth it.
means immediate trust ends.
Yeah.
It's not worth that.
Not worth it at all. I do remember at a certain point, I think it was, I can't remember who asked, but we ended up with a whiteboard and a marker.
I believe you asked for it. Yeah.
Okay. We ended up, because Jimmy took the cards with him and left.
Oh, yeah. That's true.
Jimmy took the cards with him. And so in my head, I'm, okay, well, I understand what you're doing now. okay, there's another uphill battle, but we have time. We have about 2 hours. We have time to do this, but I don't have any way to play again. So then I start thinking, and I'm like, okay, cool. Let me just ask for a whiteboard or marker. There's possibly a way that we can communicate using the whiteboard or marker as well.
Now that was kind of funny because now I have a marker. So they gave us a marker, and up until that point, I was like, let me make this as insufferable as possible, as much as possible for the both of you, because then that will be a driving pain for her to play a game at least as something extra of like, I just want to get this over with. I don't want to deal with this stupid 527 guy who's in the corner saying, right.
We'll come back to those later. Oh my goodness, the O's.
me writing on the walls, mentioning all this type of stuff. I mean, even you got pissed at me. Like, again, I'm just like, hey, like you're going too far. But that's exactly when I knew that was the perfect amount, because you started getting annoyed. And so even though you knew what was going on and you knew what I was doing. And so I kind of like took this like kind of crazy, man, approach, because up until that point, I was quiet. She didn't know you. She doesn't know me.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You're unknown.
Exactly. And so I kept it that way because I don't know what I want to play yet.
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, all right, I'm going to play the whole like Joker, go crazy in this prison cell type of like, vibe. And I had the marker. And I remember I just start drawing walls. I start drawing depictions. I say the fact Maddie, Hazem, Karim was here, and now they're all dead, because I want to reinforce the idea that we are going to all go home. I drew a little dinosaur extinction event with like a meteor, and then different like names for it. I remember drawing just everywhere on all the walls in different ways and different spellings. I draw on the door. And, again, I'm saying all these words, as I'm drawing them just to annoy you guys. And, I didn't know this. You told me after, but actually I'd say, explain it from your side, but you were talking to her basically saying like, I think this got to the point of like, she asked, is he gonna like,
oh yeah. Her and I were communicating behind your back.
Yeah. Cause
like, cause you and I communicating looks does enough. A look, a glance, or whatever, we'll be on the same page. I mean, the audience has noticed, but we spent 20 years growing up in the same bedroom, right? So it's like, there's a telepathy there that only siblings understand. And at this point, you'd have your back turned to us or something like that. But now her and I are communicating behind you.
And I would purposely like lay forward or lay flat because I want you guys to do that communication. Yeah.
Exactly. And there would be points where you'd come over and you'd smack the handcuffs, and we'd get up and we're like, okay, you're just fucking around. And it's that she's communicating. Do you think he's going to break? That's what she's communicating with me at this point. Do you think he's going to break? And I'm like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm just as confused as you are, because she's looking to me for answers, but I don't have answers. I want her imagination to go and run, and her to be like, maybe he will, And no, we do have that communication. At this point, we don't have a deck of cards again. I have the whiteboard and marker. And I remember there was a part where she was communicating with me, and it was just like yes or no questions. And then she gives me the whiteboard marker, and now I'm communicating with her, and I'm like, well, I mean, let's wait. You know what I mean? Let's not do anything. Let's wait longer. Let's see if he does break. But if he doesn't, we have to have something in the background. And this is communication between literally just writing on the whiteboard and just showing her an yes and no.
And making it seem like it's her idea.
Yes. Well, maybe we should just have a game in the background, right? So I started listing off games that we can play with the tools that we have, which is literally a whiteboard marker, or we can write on the wall. And it's like, well, do you want to play hangman? She's like, no. And I'm like, well, what about tic-tac-toe? And she's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, we have to have something as a backup. And tic-tac-toe is super quick. You know what I mean? So we're coming up with whatever, blah, 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 blah. I think we end up ordering another deck of cards.
No, actually.
A second deck of cards comes to us.
No. What happened was, actually, was it the second deck of cards, or
maybe Jimmy comes back?
I think Jimmy comes back. I remember you had slid the window open and Jimmy was right there already. So you had said like, hey, Jimmy, we're ready to play a game.